Let me ask you a question, Dr. Bugley. So the scenario where someone comes in initially with approximately 30 prism diopters of intermittent exotropia and you do a large lateral rectus recession and they end up with kind of a postoperative diplopia in lateral gazes because of the adduction lag of the laterals, but yet they're still have intermittent exotropia in this kind of central window. So what do you do about that? Because they're diplopic in side gaze, but they're still not well controlled in central gaze.
Yeah, I mean, that clearly is a problem. You've got a situation where going back and trying to do more with the laterals is going to be problematic. And that may be one situation where you do a resect recess, go back on the lateral and combine it with one medial and see if you can't strengthen things up, realizing that you may make that lateral deviation a little worse, but try to minimize where you're at going forward. So you may partially undo what you've done in order to tighten up that medial.
And I have a question, a very basic but perplexing question from the audience. For initial operations for XT, do you favor bilateral lateral rectus recessions or unilateral recess resect, and how do you make that choice?
Yeah, well, I kind of grew up with bilateral lateral rectus recessions for intermittent XT, and so that has been my first choice for years and years. It was easy to move a muscle back and not have to throw anything away as opposed to resect it. I must say, however, though, that in looking at a lot of series and talking with a lot of people, that resect-recess operations are actually pretty good in that situation as well. So I don't have a good answer for that one. I think both work. I think if there is any hint of adduction lag on the medial, then a resection of that medial is helpful. If not, I think it's up to you.
So, Ed, that was marvelous to see your thought process of how to do the different parts based on what you see. One of the things you showed was a patient that had an underacting left medial and an underacting left lateral and had an XT, and you talked about tightening up the medial on that side. Would you be more concerned about that lateral now being even more underacting when you tighten the medial on the same side?
Yeah, that's why we did the lateral on the other side in that situation. I would leave that medial alone. That's one where, if at all possible, you want to go to the other eye and match both. Actually, you'd like to do something. You might even consider put a Faden on the medial, even though you're dealing with an XT, and a large lateral rectus recession so that you match the adduction lags on both sides.
So you do the opposite eye, and you would resect the medial but put a posterior fixation. Cool.
Mike? You could also consider doing a recess resect on an adjustable.
Ed, some years ago we published a paper on reoperations and exotropia, and whether do a recess resect or bilateral further recessions. We found that if you paid attention to how the eyes turned at the beginning of surgery, that helped make the decision. And if we operated for what we saw to get the eye straight under anesthesia, that gave the better results overall. If one eye turned out more than the other, we did a recess resect. If both of us were symmetrically turned out, bilateral surgery did better. And that seemed to be a good way to choose between the R&R versus the bilateral.
And here's a question that everybody here deals with. You talked about sort of bringing out the largest angle for XT surgery. Bert Kushner has suggested doing an outside far distance measurement, sometimes even patching for an hour. And how do you bring out the largest angle? What lengths do you go to? Do you do those things? Do you prism adapt and to try to figure out what to operate for?
Yeah, of course, we're talking in situations like that for the most part, which are not intermittent XTs, are intermittent XTs, but not constant XTs. I think for constant XT, it's really not much of an issue. The question in intermittent XT is how to match the binocular, how to get rid of the binocular drive that's holding the eyes in, and whatever you want to call that. I think the best thing that I've found are two. One, I think a patch for a period of time, and usually 20, 30 minutes can be it, and making sure that you measure them as soon as the patch comes. You can't let them regain binocular function. Looking out the window, I think, is helpful in that regard. The other measurement that is not done a lot, but is also very helpful, is to do a near measurement with a +3 lens. You relax all the accommodative factors that are going on, and you often find if you do just a measurement at distance and a measurement at near, your near measurement's less, and then you put them in a +3, and suddenly the near measurement is now equal to the distance, or maybe even a little longer, and you go from there. But I mean, on some level, you know, George showed his little chart, and you know, you do 6mm recessions on one patient, and you get 20 diopters, and you do it on another patient, and you get 30 diopters, and you do it on another patient, and you get 40 diopters. So at some point in time,
it's magic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your input, Dr. Buckley.